Welcome to the channel Error Coins Hub, and listen carefully because what I'm about to tell you might completely change the way you look at pocket change forever. Most people spend this coin every day without realizing it could buy a mansion, a fleet of luxury cars, and set up generations of their family for life. We're talking about a 1972 RARE Lincoln Penny, a coin so ordinary in appearance that you've probably held dozens of them in your hand without a second thought. But here's the thing that'll blow your mind. One specific version of this coin, one rare variant that slipped through the United States Mint in Denver back in 1972, is now valued at an absolutely staggering $8 million. Yes, you heard that right, $8 million for a penny. And before you think this is just some wild exaggeration or clickbait nonsense, stick with me because the story behind this coin is absolutely fascinating. And here's where it gets even better. I've got another coin coming up after this one that'll make your jaw drop even harder. A penny from just 15 years later that's worth millions as well, but I'm not going to spoil the details just yet because trust me, you need to hear the full story of this 1972 RARE first, and then we'll dive into that second treasure that could be hiding in your collection right now. Now, let me take you back to 1972, a year when America was going through massive changes. Richard Nixon was president, the Vietnam War was winding down, and the United States Mint was churning out billions of pennies to keep up with the growing economy. The Denver Mint, marked with that little D beneath the date on Lincoln pennies, was operating at full capacity, and in the rush of production, something extraordinary happened, something that would create one of the most sought-after error coins in numismatic history. You see, the 1972 RARE Lincoln Penny that everyone's hunting for isn't just any regular penny from that year. It's a Doubled Die Obverse error, and if you're not familiar with what that means, let me break it down for you in a way that'll help you understand why collectors are willing to pay millions for this tiny piece of copper. During the minting process, dies are used to stamp the design onto blank metal discs called planchets. And these dies have to be created with extreme precision because they're what give coins their images and details. Now, back in 1972, the process wasn't as computerized as it is today, and human error combined with mechanical issues could lead to some spectacular mistakes. A double die error occurs when the die itself gets misaligned during the hubbing process. That's when the master hub stamps the design onto the working die, and if the die shifts even slightly between impressions, you get this doubling effect where parts of the design appear twice, creating a shadowy, doubled image that's visible to the naked eye. The 1972 RARE Doubled Die Obverse penny shows this doubling most prominently on the obverse side, which is the front of the coin featuring Abraham Lincoln's profile, and if you look closely at a genuine example, you'll see dramatic doubling on the letters of Liberty and the date 1972, with Liberty showing such strong doubling that it almost looks like the letters were stamped twice with a ghost image trailing behind. The phrase "In God We Trust" also shows clear doubling, making it unmistakable once you know what to look for. And this isn't subtle doubling that you need a microscope to see. This is bold, obvious, in-your-face doubling that screams error from across the room. Now here's where the story gets really interesting and where that $8 million valuation comes into play. When these error coins first started showing up in circulation back in 1972, most people had no idea what they had, and thousands of these pennies were probably spent at face value, dropped into vending machines used to buy candy bars, or tossed into jars and forgotten about for decades. But as word spread through the numismatic community that a major double die error had escaped the Denver Mint, collectors started searching frantically through rolls of pennies, checking every 1972 RARE they could find, and the hunt was on. What makes this particular error so valuable isn't just the dramatic visual impact of the doubling. It's the combination of rarity, condition, and collector demand that's driven prices into the stratosphere. You see, while thousands of these double die pennies were initially released into circulation, finding one in pristine, uncirculated condition is extraordinarily rare because most of them were used as regular pocket change and accumulated wear, scratches, and damage over the years. Professional coin grading services like PCGS and NGC use a numerical scale from 1 to 70 to rate the condition of coins, with 70 being absolutely perfect and anything above 60 considered uncirculated or mint state. And when it comes to the 1972 Doubled Die Obverse penny, condition is everything. A worn example in lower grades might be worth a few hundred to a few $1,000s, which is still incredible for a penny, but as you move up the grading scale, the values explode exponentially. An example graded MS64, which means mint state 64, or a coin with minimal marks and strong eye appeal, could fetch anywhere from $50,000 to several $100,000 depending on the market. But when you get into the truly elite territory of MS67 and above, you're talking about specimens so rare and so perfect that they become the crown jewels of world-class collections. In recent years, as the rare coin market has heated up and new generations of collectors have entered the hobby with deep pockets and a passion for rare coins, the finest known examples of the 1972 Doubled Die Obverse have sold for absolutely mind-blowing prices at major auctions, and the current record, the one that has the coin world buzzing, is that $8 million valuation for a specimen graded MS68 Plus by PCGS, making it quite possibly the most valuable Lincoln penny error in existence. Think about that for a moment. $8 million for a coin that was originally worth 1 cent. A coin that was supposed to be nothing more than pocket change, and now it's worth more than most people will earn in their entire lifetimes. But here's what really gets collectors excited, and here's why you should be checking every single 1972 penny that comes into your hands. There are still examples out there waiting to be discovered. Not everyone who found one of these coins back in the 1970s knew what they had, and many were simply stored away in old coin collections, stuck in albums, or kept in jars with other loose change. Estate sales, old bank bags, inherited coin collections, and even circulation finds continue to turn up examples of this legendary error. And every single year, someone somewhere makes a discovery that changes their life forever. Imagine going through your grandmother's old coin jar and finding a 1972 penny that looks a little off, with doubled letters that catch your eye, and then having it authenticated and graded only to discover you're holding a 6-figure or even 7-figure treasure. It happens, and it could happen to you if you know what to look for. Now, I know what some of you might be thinking. How do I tell the difference between a genuine 1972 Doubled Die Obverse and other pennies from that year, or worse, how do I avoid falling for counterfeits and alterations? This is crucial because as values have skyrocketed, so has the number of fakes, altered coins, and mechanical doubling examples that sellers try to pass off as the real thing. Mechanical doubling, also called machine doubling, can occur during the striking process and create a shelf-like doubling effect that looks somewhat similar to a true doubled die, but it's fundamentally different and worth only face value. The key to identifying a genuine doubled die is understanding that the doubling occurs on the die itself, not during the strike, so the doubled image appears as a distinct, separate raised design element with clear separation and definition. On the 1972 DDO, you'll see crisp, bold doubling on Liberty, especially on the letters B, E, R, and T, with the doubling spreading toward the rim, and the 1972 date will show strong doubling as well, with the numerals appearing to have a clear shadow or secondary image. If you think you've found one, the smartest thing you can do is have it authenticated by a professional grading service like PCGS or NGC, because they have experts who've examined thousands of these coins and can spot a genuine example immediately. And yes, grading costs money, usually somewhere between $30 and $100 depending on the service level, but if you genuinely have a 1972 Doubled Die Obverse, that's the best investment you'll ever make because certification not only confirms authenticity but also dramatically increases the coin's market value. Now, before we move on, I want you to remember something really important. This 1972 Doubled Die Obverse isn't the only valuable penny hiding in plain sight, and that's where our next coin comes in, the one I teased at the beginning. We're about to explore a 1987 Lincoln penny that has its own incredible story and a value that'll shock you just as much as this one. But what makes it even more interesting is that it's from a completely different era of American coinage, a time when the mint had supposedly perfected its quality control processes, and yet errors still happened, major errors that created coins worth millions. So don't go anywhere, because after you hear about this next penny, you're going to be checking every single coin in your possession, and who knows, maybe you're sitting on a fortune right now and don't even know it. The 1972 Doubled Die Obverse has captivated collectors for over 50 years now, and its legend only grows stronger with each passing auction, each new discovery, and each incredible price realization. Stories circulate in the numismatic community about people who bought collections at garage sales for $20 and found a 1972 DDO tucked inside, or about bank tellers who noticed something odd about a penny someone deposited and ended up with a life-changing find. These aren't just myths or urban legends. They're real stories that happen more often than you'd think, and they could happen to you if you stay alert and educated. The beauty of RARE coin collecting is that it's one of the few areas of investing where ordinary people still have a legitimate shot at finding something extraordinary without spending thousands of dollars up front. You don't need to be wealthy to search through pocket change, you don't need special connections to check rolls of pennies from your bank, and you don't need a doctorate in numismatics to learn what these errors look like. What you need is knowledge, persistence, and a good eye for detail. And that's exactly what I'm giving you right here on this channel. The tools and information you need to potentially find a coin worth millions. The 1972 Lincoln Penny Doubled Die Obverse represents everything that's magical about RARE coins. It's accessible, it's dramatic, it's valuable, and it's still out there waiting to be found. Every time you handle a 1972 penny, take an extra second to look at it closely, check those letters in Liberty, examine the date, and see if anything looks doubled or unusual, because that 1 second of attention could be the difference between spending a penny and discovering $8 million. And remember, we're just getting started here, because the next coin I'm about to reveal to you has an equally fascinating backstory, involves different types of errors and minting mysteries, and yes, it's worth millions as well, so stay right here with me, because we're about to dive deep into another numismatic treasure that could absolutely be hiding in your collection right now. And trust me when I say this, by the end of this video, you're going to see pocket change in a completely different light, and you might just become the next person to make headlines with an incredible rare coin discovery that changes everything. Last, the 1987 Lincoln Penny. And if you thought that 1972 Doubled Die Obverse was incredible, buckle up, because what I'm about to share with you about this 1987 penny will absolutely blow your mind and prove that even in the modern era of sophisticated minting technology and advanced quality control systems, errors still slip through that create coins worth absolutely staggering amounts of money. We're talking $5 million for a 1987 Lincoln penny. Now, before we dive into exactly what makes this particular penny so spectacularly valuable, let me set the stage for you, because understanding the context of 1987 and what was happening at the United States Mint that year is crucial to appreciating just how remarkable this era really is. By 1987, the U.S. Mint had come a long way from the manual processes and mechanical limitations of earlier decades. Computer-aided design was being implemented, quality control protocols were more rigorous than ever, and the production of billions of pennies annually had become a highly refined industrial process with multiple checkpoints designed to catch errors before they reached circulation. The Lincoln penny itself had been in production since 1909, making it one of the longest-running coin designs in American history, and by 1987, the Mint had produced hundreds of billions of these coins with generally consistent quality. Both the Philadelphia Mint, which produces pennies without a mint mark, and the Denver Mint, identified by the D mint mark, were churning out Lincoln cents by the billions, and the design featuring Abraham Lincoln's profile on the obverse and the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse had become so familiar to Americans that most people never gave these coins a second glance. But here's where things get absolutely fascinating. Despite all the technological advances, despite all the quality control measures, despite the Mint's best efforts to ensure that every single coin met exact specifications, a major error occurred in 1987 that created one of the most valuable modern pennies in existence, and the story of how this happened involves a combination of human oversight, mechanical malfunction, and sheer chance that resulted in a tiny number of error coins escaping into circulation where they remain hidden to this day. The 1987 penny we're talking about isn't just one type of error. Depending on which specific variant you're looking at, there are actually several different error types from 1987 that command massive premiums, but the absolute crown jewel, the one that's valued at $5 million, is an extraordinarily rare example that combines multiple errors in a single coin, creating what collectors call a perfect storm error that may be completely unique or limited to just a handful of known specimens. Let me explain exactly what we're dealing with here because the technical details are what separate a regular 1987 penny worth 1 cent from one worth $5 million. And trust me, once you understand what to look for, you'll be checking every 1987 penny you encounter for the rest of your life. The most famous and valuable error from 1987 is what's known as a doubled die obverse error, similar in nature to the 1972 D we just discussed, but with its own unique characteristics and rarity factors. The 1987 doubled die shows dramatic doubling primarily on the word liberty and the motto "In God We Trust," with the doubling so pronounced that even casual observers can spot it without magnification once they know what they're looking for. But here's where it gets even more interesting: the absolute record-breaking specimen, the one that achieved that $5 million valuation, isn't just a double die, it's a double die that was struck on a wrong planchet, meaning the error die struck a blank that was intended for a completely different denomination. Imagine the chain of events that had to occur for this to happen. First, the double die error had to be created during the die production process. Then that defective die had to make it past quality inspectors and actually be installed in a coining press. Then a wrong planchet from a different denomination had to somehow end up in the penny production line. And finally, that wrong planchet had to be struck by the double die, creating a coin with not one but two major errors, and then that coin had to escape final inspection and make it into circulation. The odds of all these factors aligning are astronomical, which is exactly why this coin is so incredibly rare and valuable. Now, let's talk about the specific characteristics you need to look for if you're searching for valuable 1987 pennies. Because while the $5 million specimen is exceptionally rare, there are other 1987 errors out there that are worth thousands or even tens of thousands of dollars, and those are much more findable. A standard 1987 doubled die obverse penny, one struck on the correct copper-plated zinc planchet, will show strong doubling on liberty, particularly on the letters L, I, B, and T. And you'll also see doubling on "In God We Trust," especially visible on the letters T, R, U, and S. The date 1987 may also show some doubling, though it's typically less dramatic than the doubling on the lettering. If you examine the coin under good lighting or with a basic magnifying glass, the doubling should be clearly visible as distinct, separated images rather than just blurry or worn letters. Authentication is absolutely critical here because as values have climbed, so has the number of questionable coins being offered for sale online and at coin shows, and mechanical doubling or damage that creates the appearance of doubling can fool inexperienced collectors. If you think you've found a 1987 double die obverse, your first step should be to compare it carefully against authenticated examples. There are excellent online resources, including the PCGS and NGC websites, that provide high-resolution images of genuine 1987 DDO pennies, and these can serve as reference points for your own examination. Once you've determined that your coin appears to match the characteristics of a genuine error, the next step is professional authentication and grading, and this is not optional if you want to realize the full value of your discovery. Submitting a coin to PCGS or NGC involves sending it securely to their grading facilities where expert numismatists examine it under high-powered magnification, verify its authenticity, assign a numerical grade based on its condition, and encapsulate it in a tamper-evident holder with a label that provides all the key information about the coin. This process typically takes several weeks and costs anywhere from $30 to several $100 depending on the service level you choose and the declared value of the coin. But for a genuine 1987 RARE penny, this is an essential investment because certification can increase the coin's market value by orders of magnitude. A raw, uncertified 1987 DDO might sell for a few $1,000s to a knowledgeable buyer willing to take the risk, but that same coin certified as genuine by PCGS or NGC in a high grade could command $50,000, $100,000, or even more depending on the specific variety and condition. Now, I mentioned that the record-setting $5 million specimen was struck on a wrong planchet, and this is where things get truly exotic in the world of error coins. Wrong planchet errors occur when a blank intended for one denomination gets struck by dies meant for a different denomination, and these errors can happen in several ways. Sometimes blanks from different denominations get mixed together in the minting facility due to human error or mechanical malfunction, and they end up in the wrong hopper or feeding mechanism. Other times, a blank from a previous production run remains lodged in machinery or gets stuck somewhere in the press, only to be dislodged and struck during production of a different coin type. In the case of the 1987 penny struck on a wrong planchet, the specific denomination of the wrong planchet adds to the coin's mystique and value. If it was struck on a dime planchet, for example, you'd have a Lincoln cent design on a coin that's smaller and made of a different metal composition than a regular penny, creating a coin that's immediately recognizable as wrong to anyone who examines it. If it was struck on a quarter planchet, you'd have the opposite situation, a penny design on a larger, heavier blank that stands out instantly. The rarest and most valuable wrong planchet errors are those struck on foreign planchets or on planchets from denominations that make the error particularly dramatic and obvious. And when you combine a wrong planchet error with a doubled die, you've got a coin that represents the absolute pinnacle of modern mint errors, a coin so rare that major collectors and institutions will compete fiercely to acquire it, driving prices into the millions. The story of how the $5,001,987 penny was discovered is itself legendary in numismatic circles, though details are often kept private to protect the finder's identity and security. According to reports that have circulated through the collector community, the coin was found by someone who wasn't even a serious collector at the time, but who had enough knowledge to recognize that something was unusual about the penny they'd encountered. After consulting with local coin dealers and eventually submitting the coin for professional authentication, the magnitude of the discovery became clear, and the coin eventually made its way to auction where it set an unprecedented record for a modern Lincoln cent. The exact circumstances of the find, whether it came from circulation, from an old collection, from a bankroll, or from some other source, remain somewhat mysterious, adding to the coin's allure and keeping hope alive for treasure hunters everywhere that another specimen might still be out there waiting to be discovered. Now, let's talk about the broader context of 1987 penny collecting, because even if you don't find the $5 million wrong planchet double die, there are other valuable errors and varieties from this year that are absolutely worth hunting for. In addition to the Doubled Die Obverse, there are also examples of repunched mint marks from the Denver Mint, where the D mint mark was punched into the die more than once in slightly different positions, creating a doubled or notched appearance in the mint mark itself. While these RPM varieties aren't worth millions, strong examples in high grades can still fetch several hundred to several $1,000s. making them worthwhile finds for anyone building a collection or looking to profit from error hunting. There are also broad strike errors from 1987, where pennies were struck outside the restraining collar that normally holds the planchet in place, resulting in coins that are slightly larger in diameter and thinner than normal pennies, with edges that show the metal's flow during striking. Off-center strikes, where the planchet wasn't properly centered under the dies and part of the design is missing with blank area visible, also exist from 1987, and the value of these depends on the percentage of off-center striking and whether the date remains visible. A 50% off-center 1987 penny with a clear date might be worth $20 to $100 depending on condition, while extreme off-center strikes of 75% or more with the date still showing could command several $100s or more to error collectors. The key to successful error hunting is understanding that not every coin that looks unusual is actually an error. There's a huge difference between post-mint damage, environmental damage, and genuine mint errors, and learning to distinguish between them is essential if you want to avoid wasting time and money chasing worthless damaged coins. Post-mint damage includes things like scratches, dents, corrosion, and other alterations that happened after the coin left the mint, and these almost never add value to a coin. In fact, they usually reduce value below that of a normal coin in similar condition. Environmental damage like PVC residue from old vinyl coin holders, verdigris from copper corrosion, or toning from exposure to sulfur compounds might affect a coin's appearance, but again, these aren't errors and they typically hurt rather than help value. Genuine mint errors, on the other hand, occur during the manufacturing process at the mint and include things like die errors, double dies, die cracks, die breaks, die clashes, planchet errors, wrong planchets, clipped planchets, split planchets, and striking errors, off-center strikes, broad strikes, multiple strikes, partial collar errors. And these are the errors that collectors actually want and will pay premiums to acquire. When examining your 1987 pennies, focus on looking for these genuine error types and don't get distracted by damage or normal production variations that have no collector value. One of the most common questions I get asked is, how many 1987 Doubled Die Obverse pennies are out there? And the honest answer is that nobody knows for certain. The mint doesn't keep records of how many error coins escape their quality control processes. They're more focused on catching and destroying errors before they reach the public. So population estimates are based on the number of examples that have been submitted for grading and certification, plus estimates of how many might exist in private collections or remain undiscovered in circulation. For the 1987 DDO specifically, the population reports from PCGS and NGC show fewer than 100 certified examples combined, which suggests that this is a genuinely scarce error, though it's almost certainly not as rare as the single-digit populations of the most extreme rarities like the $5 million wrong planchet specimen. What this means for you as a treasure hunter is that the odds of finding a 1987 DDO are low but not impossible. Billions of 1987 pennies were minted between the Philadelphia and Denver facilities, and while the vast majority are normal strikes, there are error coins mixed in among them, and some of those error coins are still in circulation or sitting in collections waiting to be properly identified. Every 1987 penny you encounter is worth examining, even if just for a few seconds, because that quick glance could reveal doubling that changes your financial future. The condition of any 1987 error you find will dramatically impact its value, just as we discussed with the 1972 D, and this is where understanding coin grading becomes crucial. The Sheldon scale, which runs from 1 to 70, is the standard grading system used throughout numismatics, and mastering the basics of the scale will help you assess what you've found and set realistic expectations for value. At the low end of the scale, grades 1 through 3 represent coins that are barely identifiable, heavily worn or damaged to the point where only the denomination and rough details are visible. These are essentially valueless even if they're error coins because the error itself has been worn away or is no longer clearly visible. Grades 4 through 20 cover various stages of heavy to moderate wear, and while an error coin in these grades might have some value to specialists, it won't command serious money from most collectors. The real action starts in the very fine to extremely fine range, grades 20 through 45, where the coin shows wear from circulation but still retains most of its design details and the error characteristics remain clearly visible. A 1987 DDO in VF or EF condition might be worth anywhere from a few hundred to a few $1,000s depending on the specific grade and eye appeal. Moving up into about uncirculated territory, grades 50 through 58, you're dealing with coins that saw minimal circulation and retain most of their original luster and detail, with just light wear on the highest points. Error coins in AU grades can command significant premiums, potentially $5,000 to $20,000 or more for a 1987 DDO depending on market conditions. But the real prizes are coins in mint state, grades 60 through 70, which show no signs of circulation wear and are valued primarily on the basis of their original strike quality, surface preservation, luster, and eye appeal. A 1987 DDO in MS63, which is choice uncirculated, might be worth $20,000 to $50,000. In MS65, which is gem uncirculated, you could be looking at $100,000 to $300,000, and in MS67 or higher, you're in the stratosphere where values can reach into the hundreds of thousands or even millions, especially if the coin also features additional error characteristics like the wrong planchet we discussed earlier. Understanding these grading nuances helps you appreciate why condition is so critical and why protecting any potential error you find from further damage is absolutely essential. Don't clean it, don't polish it, don't handle it excessively, and store it safely in a proper holder until you can get it professionally evaluated. The market for modern error coins like the 1987 penny has exploded in recent years, driven by several factors that have converged to create unprecedented demand and rising prices. First, there's been a generational shift in collecting, with younger collectors entering the hobby and bringing with them different priorities and preferences. Many younger collectors are drawn to modern errors because they represent coins that could theoretically still be found in circulation, making the hunt accessible and exciting rather than just writing checks to dealers for expensive historical rarities. Second, the rise of online marketplaces, social media, and YouTube channels dedicated to coin collecting has dramatically increased awareness of error coins and their values, exposing millions of people to the hobby who might never have visited a traditional coin shop or joined a local club. Third, certification services like PCGS and NGC have made it easier to buy error coins with confidence, knowing that authenticity and grade have been verified by experts, which has expanded the market by attracting buyers who might otherwise be wary of counterfeits or overgraded raw coins. Fourth, the overall rare coin market has seen strong performance as alternative investments, with many coins outperforming traditional stocks and bonds, especially during periods of economic uncertainty when investors seek tangible assets with intrinsic value and historical significance. All of these factors have combined to create a perfect storm of demand for top-quality error coins, and the 1987 Lincoln Penny, with its compelling story, dramatic visual impact, and genuine rarity, sits right at the center of this market phenomenon. As we wrap up our deep dive into this incredible 1987 penny, I want to leave you with some practical advice that can help you in your own treasure hunting journey, whether you're specifically targeting 1987 errors or just hoping to find valuable coins in general. First, develop a systematic approach to searching. Rather than randomly checking coins here and there, commit to searching through entire rolls or boxes of pennies, which you can often obtain from your bank at face value, and work through them methodically, examining each coin carefully for error characteristics. Second, educate yourself continuously by studying images of genuine errors, reading reference books and online resources, joining online communities where collectors share their finds and knowledge, and staying current with market trends and new discoveries. Third, invest in basic tools that will make your searching more effective. At minimum, You should have a decent magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe with at least 10x magnification, good lighting for examining coins, and proper storage materials like coin flips or holders to protect anything interesting you find. Fourth, network with other collectors and dealers in your area, because these relationships can provide valuable learning opportunities, help you verify potential finds, and even alert you to collections or coin lots that might contain errors. Fifth, be patient and persistent, because error hunting is ultimately a numbers game. You might search through 10,000 pennies before finding anything significant, or you might hit the jackpot in your first roll. But either way, consistency and dedication are what separate successful treasure hunters from people who give up after a few futile searches. And finally, remember that the journey itself is part of the reward. Yes, finding a $5 million coin would be life-changing. But even if you never make that ultimate discovery, the knowledge you gain, the connections you make, and the thrill of the hunt make coin collecting a rewarding hobby that enriches your life in ways that go beyond just monetary value. The 1987 Lincoln Penny, especially the rare doubled die and wrong planchet varieties, represents everything that makes modern error collecting so exciting. These are coins from our lifetime, coins that could literally be sitting in a jar in your house right now, coins that prove that extraordinary treasures can hide in the most ordinary places. Every time you receive change at a store, every time you break open a roll of pennies from the bank, every time you sort through old coins that have been sitting in a drawer for decades, you have an opportunity to make a discovery that could change everything, and that possibility, that potential for turning pocket change into a fortune, is what keeps collectors searching, studying, and dreaming about that next great find. The 1972 Doubled Die Obverse worth $8 million and the 1987 Lincoln Penny worth $5 million are not just coins. They're symbols of possibility, reminders that value can be found in unexpected places, and proof that with knowledge, patience, and a bit of luck, anyone can participate in the treasure hunt that is error coin collecting. So keep your eyes open, keep learning, keep searching, and who knows, maybe you'll be the next person to make headlines with an incredible discovery that proves once and for all that fortune really does favor those who are prepared to recognize it when it appears. Check every 1972 penny for that dramatic double die. Examine every 1987 penny for errors and unusual characteristics. And never assume that the coins in your pocket are just ordinary currency, because as we've seen today, some of them are worth millions and one of them could be yours.